A struggling single mother, working 3 jobs to save for her daughter's surgery, accidentally crashes a billionaire's exclusive charity gala, where one medical emergency, one brave child, and one broken man collide to shatter the walls between two impossible worlds. The rain hammered against the pavement like 1,000 tiny fists. Grace Bennett stood outside the Lancaster Grand Hotel, her daughter Mia's small hand clasped tightly in hers, staring up at the golden glow spilling from the revolving doors. "Mommy, are we really going in there?" 6-year-old Mia's voice was barely a whisper, her wide brown eyes reflecting the crystal chandeliers visible through the glass. Grace's chest tightened. She glanced down at her daughter's borrowed dress, a pale blue thing from the church donation box that almost fit. Then at her own black slacks and white button-down shirt, the uniform from her morning shift at the diner. She'd planned to change, but the bus had been late and... "Stop. You belong here as much as anyone. We're going in, baby." Grace forced confidence into her voice. "Mrs. Chen said the charity auction has a children's medical fund. We're going to try." The truth was uglier. Grace had been cleaning Mrs. Chen's house for 2 years, and the elderly woman had slipped her this invitation with tears in her eyes. "For Mia's surgery," she'd whispered. "Just ask." Sometimes miracles happen in rooms like these. Grace didn't believe in miracles, but she believed in fighting. They stepped through the revolving door into another universe. The ballroom was breathtaking. Vaulted ceilings draped in silk, tables adorned with ice sculptures, men in tuxedos and women in gowns that cost more than Grace made in 6 months. A string quartet played something elegant and unreachable. Grace felt every eye turn toward them. A woman in emerald green nudged her companion, whispering behind a champagne flute. A man in a tailored suit smirked as he assessed Grace's scuffed shoes. Mia squeezed her mother's hand. "Mommy, everyone's looking." "Then let them look." Grace lifted her chin, leading Mia toward the registration table. A young woman with a tight smile and an iPad looked up. "Good evening. Name?" "Grace Bennett. I have an invitation from..." "I'll need to verify." The woman's eyes traveled from Grace's uniform to Mia's ill-fitting dress. "This is a private event. $5,000 minimum contribution." Grace's stomach dropped. I know. I'm not here for the dinner. I was told there's a medical fund committee I could speak with about my daughters. The fund representatives are only available to registered donors." The woman's smile never reached her eyes. "Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at the community clinic on 5th Street. Heat flooded Grace's cheeks. Mia tugged at her hand, sensing the rejection. "Is there a problem?" The voice was deep, authoritative, edged with ice. Grace turned. He was tall, 6'2", maybe 6'3", with sharp features that belonged on a magazine cover, and eyes the color of steel in winter. His tuxedo fit like it had been sewn onto him by invisible hands. Everything about him screamed power, money, untouchability. Alexander Hawthorne. Grace recognized him from business magazines at the dentist's office. Youngest billionaire CEO in the city. Tech empire. Reputation for being brilliant and ruthless. Mr. Hawthorne. The registration woman practically melted. "No problem at all. I was just explaining," saying. "She has an invitation." His eyes never left Grace's face. "That's all that's required." Saying, "Of course, but is there an entry requirement I'm unaware of?" His tone could freeze oceans. "Perhaps a dress code that supersedes the invitation itself." The woman paled. "No, Mr. Hawthorne. Please, Ms. Bennett, welcome." She slapped a name tag onto the table. Alexander gestured toward the ballroom. "After you." "Person." Grace hesitated, pride warring with necessity. She took the name tag. Thank you, she managed, her voice steadier than she felt. She started to walk past him, but Mia stopped, staring up at the billionaire with the fearless curiosity only children possess. You're really tall, Mia announced. For the first time, something flickered across Alexander Hawthorne's face. Not quite a smile. Something softer. And you're really observant. My mommy says I notice everything. Mia beamed. Are you a prince? You look like a prince. Alexander's jaw tightened, the mask reassembling. No, just a man who knows how to wear a suit. My mommy knows how to wear 15 different things, Mia said proudly. She works a lot of jobs. She's basically a superhero. Grace gently pulled Mia forward, embarrassment burning through her. Come on, sweetheart. But as they walked away, Grace could feel Alexander Hawthorne's eyes following them across the marble floor. They found seats at the back, near the kitchen doors. Grace watched as paddles flew up for paintings, vacation packages, diamond jewelry. Numbers that made her dizzy. A weekend in Monaco went for $80,000 like it was pocket change. Mia fidgeted, her eyes heavy. It was past her bedtime, and Grace had promised this would be quick. But there was no committee table. No opportunity to speak to anyone official. Just endless displays of wealth. This was a mistake. A waiter approached their table, his expression pinched. Excuse me. These seats are reserved for platinum donors. Grace's pulse quickened. There was no one here when we... I'm going to have to ask you to move to the standing area. We're fine here, Grace said quietly, firmly. Ma'am, I don't think you understand. She understands perfectly. Alexander Hawthorne appeared like a shadow given form, a glass of whiskey in his hand. These seats are at my table. Miss Bennet is my guest. The waiter's face went white. I apologize, Mr. Hawthorne. I didn't realize. You didn't ask. Alexander sat down beside Mia, ignoring the waiter's retreat. He glanced at the little girl, who was staring at him with open wonder. Not tired yet. I'm very tired, Mia admitted. But Mommy says sometimes we have to be tired to help people. Smart mother. Grace's hands were trembling in her lap. She forced herself to meet his gaze. You didn't have to do that. No, he agreed. But I did anyway. He took a sip of whiskey, his eyes scanning the room with something like contempt. These people are vultures in evening wear. Someone should remind them what charity actually means. And you're different? His smile was sharp. I never claimed to be. An uncomfortable silence settled between them, broken only by the auctioneer's rapid-fire patter. Oh my God, is that the cleaning woman? The voice carried across the table, a woman in her 50s, with perfect silver hair and a diamond necklace that could fund a hospital wing. She was staring directly at Grace. Grace's blood went cold. I think it is, another woman chimed in, delighted by the scandal. Veronica Chen's housekeeper. How did she get in here? Probably stole an invitation, the first woman said, loud enough for half the room to hear. How desperate. Mia's face crumpled. Grace felt her daughter's humiliation as if it were her own heart being crushed. Ladies. Alexander's voice cut through the chatter like a blade. If you're finished assassinating characters, perhaps you'd like to examine your own contributions tonight. I believe you bid on the charity jewelry, but plan to return it for tax deductions. Should we discuss that publicly? The women's faces went scarlet. I thought not. Alexander turned back to his drink, dismissing them entirely. The auction continued, but Grace couldn't hear it anymore. Her vision blurred with tears she refused to shed. Not here. Not in front of Mia. But Mia stood up, her small voice ringing clear in the cavernous room. My mommy isn't desperate. She's brave. She works 3 jobs so I can have surgery, and she never complains. And she reads to me every night, even when she's so tired she can barely stand up. And if you can't see how amazing she is, then you're just blind. The ballroom fell silent. Every eye was on the 6-year-old girl, with tears streaming down her face, and her mother trying to hold herself together. Then Alexander Hawthorne did something no one expected. He stood. He placed his hand gently on Mia's shoulder, and he addressed the room. This child has more courage than anyone here, and her mother has more dignity than this entire event. His eyes swept across the crowd, cold and final. If anyone has a problem with their presence, you can take it up with me, and I promise you'll lose. The moment fractured. A crash from the far side of the room, glass shattering, someone screaming. Grace's head snapped toward the commotion. A man in his 60s was on the floor, convulsing, foam at his lips. His wife was shrieking, people backing away in horror. "Someone call 911, a voice shouted. But no one moved. They were frozen, afraid, useless in their designer clothes. Grace was on her feet before she could think. "Move!" She pushed through the crowd, dropping to her knees beside the man. Her hands moved on instinct, checking his airway, positioning his head, her fingers finding his pulse. "He's seizing," she said sharply. "Does anyone have a medical kit?" Blank stares. Of course not. She turned the man on his side, protecting his head with her hand, counting seconds in her mind. 5 years as an EMT before Mia was born, before life got complicated, before she lost everything. But the training never left. "Someone time this," she instructed. She ordered. "And get me a cloth, anything soft." Alexander appeared with his jacket, kneeling beside her. "What do you need?" That, under his head. Grace's voice was steady, professional. The panic of the room disappeared. There was only this, the rhythm of breathing, the timing of the seizure, the weight of a life in her hands. The man's convulsions began to slow. Grace monitored his breathing, her hand on his wrist, her eyes on his face. "Come on," she whispered. "Come back." 30 seconds, 45, the seizure stopped. The man's eyes fluttered open, confused and terrified. "You're okay," Grace said gently. "You had a seizure. Stay still. Paramedics are coming." The man's wife was sobbing, clutching Grace's arm. "Thank you. Oh God, thank you." Grace nodded, her hands still shaking with adrenaline. When she looked up, the entire ballroom was staring at her. Not with judgment this time, with shock. With respect, Alexander Hawthorne was staring too, but his expression was different, like he was seeing her for the first time. The paramedics arrived, taking over with smooth efficiency. Grace stepped back, her white shirt stained, her knees bruised from the marble floor. Mia ran to her, wrapping small arms around her waist. "You saved him, Mommy." "I just helped, baby." Grace's voice cracked. Alexander stood a few feet away, his jacket ruined, his expression unreadable. Then he crossed to them, his voice low. "You're an EMT." "Was," Grace corrected, "a long time ago." "Why did you stop?" The question was too personal, too direct, but she was too exhausted to deflect. "Because life happened. Because I had a daughter to raise, and bills to pay, and being an EMT doesn't cover medical debt." Understanding flickered in his eyes, something human beneath the ice. "Come with me," he said quietly. "What?" "You came here tonight for a reason. Let's make sure you get what you need." Alexander led them through a side door, away from the gawking crowd, into a private lounge. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city lights. Leather furniture. Silence. Mia immediately curled up on a couch, her eyes drooping. Grace stood awkwardly, unsure why she'd followed this man into a room that felt like stepping into his world uninvited. Alexander poured water from a crystal pitcher, handing her a glass. Sit. It wasn't a command. It was permission. She sat. For a long moment, neither spoke. The sounds of the gala were muffled here, distant. Just the faint hum of the city below and Mia's soft breathing. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" Alexander asked finally. "About your training." Grace stared at the water. "Because it doesn't matter. In rooms like that, I'm the help. Credentials don't change that." "You saved a man's life in front of 200 people," he said. "I'd say it matters. For tonight, maybe." Her voice was tired, honest. "Tomorrow I'll still be cleaning houses and serving coffee and praying I can scrape together enough for Mia's surgery. That's the reality." Alexander was quiet, his expression unreadable. Then, "Tell me about the surgery." Grace hesitated. Talking about Mia's condition felt like ripping open a wound. But something in his tone, genuine, stripped of pretense, made her answer. "Congenital heart defect," she said softly. "Needs repair before she turns 7, or the damage becomes irreversible. It's a complicated procedure, expensive. Insurance won't cover it all, and I've been denied assistance 3 times. How much do you need?" $240,000. The number felt obscene in her mouth. "I have 18,000 saved, so I'm working. I'm trying. 3 jobs. 3.5 if you count the weekend babysitting." Alexander leaned back, his jaw tight. "My daughter had the same condition." Grace's breath caught. "Had?" "She died." His voice was flat, emotionless, like he was reading a stock report. 8 years ago. She was 4. We had the best surgeons, the best hospitals. It didn't matter." The air in the room shifted, heavy with grief. "I'm sorry," Grace whispered. "Don't be." He drained his whiskey. "I wasn't there. I was in Tokyo, closing a deal when she collapsed. I was on a plane when she died. My ex-wife called me at 30,000 feet to tell me our daughter was gone, and I couldn't even hold her one last time." His voice finally cracked. Grace saw it then, the fortress around this man, built brick by brick from guilt and loss. "That's why you're here tonight," she said, quietly. "The Children's Medical Fund."